Just make sure you talk like right into the mic because I always sound louder.
What?
I always
What?
I just sound a lot louder than you. We haven't really prepared, Cody. You are way too far away from that mic. You are way too far away. But we just jumped right in. But welcome to this week's episode. I was going to record a solo episode, and then I was telling Cody I didn't really know what the topic was, so I was running ideas by him, and then we just got into a really good conversation that I think a lot of people will relate to, and I was just like, should we just record this right now? It's the weekend. So yeah, so we're just kind of winging it. I did a very loose outline, and you haven't looked at the outline.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, but it's like basically what we were talking about before. Like, and I was just like, we need to save this for the podcast because this is actually like very like a very good conversation. Anyway,
it's gonna be some gotcha journalism.
No, we're not. What's that lady's name from Parks and Recreation?
Joan Calamezzo.
Yeah, not that.
Gotcha.
I think she's always in your seat though, like in the show when she's interviewing people, she's in your seat. Maybe I should be in that seat as an interviewer.
I got a surprise.
Okay, well, anyway, so this is not a solo episode. It's a solo episode, not solo episode with Cody. And we're going to talk today about back to school. We're going to talk about kids, adding more kids, having more kids. Not that we're having more children.
Not an announcement.
It's not an announcement.
It better not be.
But we're just going to talk about that. We'll get into it. I have a tendency of getting ahead of myself. I was going to talk about like the weather. I'm like the weather. And if you live in Utah, the weather has been so annoying.
No, we're not talking about the weather.
Well, it's like a nice way to warm up the episode is like talking about
warm like the weather in Utah recently. All right.
It's warm, but windy and rainy, which is very confusing. Yeah. Speaking of which, this could be a good segue into our topic of back to school. When we went to go pick up Harper from school the other day, it was really nice weather all day. And then we went to go pick her up and it just started pouring rain and we were leaving our house a little late. And then anyway, we were like late picking her up. We've had like some issues with her watch not working where we can call her. The battery's been dying. And anyway, it was just basically an entire cluster. So
a cluster that is our life generally.
We were both very mad. And so was Daphne. Yeah, so...
And I think Harper even called me from her watch and was like yelling at me, like, where are you?
Well, I called her after you dropped me off, I called her and I was like, because it was a couple minutes after school got out and I'm just thinking to myself, you know, that my little 6-year-old is looking for her mom, probably feeling scared. And, you know, and so I call her and I'm like, I'm coming, just wait. And she seemed a little annoyed. But yeah, so I thought we would talk about just kind of back to school and how last week went. School started for our older daughter, Harper, last week. And then preschool starts next week for Daphne. How did you think everything went?
I mean, aside from pick up and drop off, it's been good.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do the drop offs because of the time. I'm already on my way to work, you know, when you drop her off. And then I'm at work when she has to be picked up, which is frustrating for me because I don't get to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Would you really want to though?
I'm trying to sound like a good dad who wants to be like super involved, but no, I don't. I don't want to go through that line. And yeah,
I know. Yeah. So let's talk about the pickup line. First of all, that was like one thing that was kind of frustrating. And like, we're not shitting on this. I think this is just how all schools are. It's not just like shitting on our school. Like, we love our kids' school. We love their teachers. Like, we've had a great experience. But as a parent, what's been frustrating for me the most, like in the last year since Harper started kindergarten and me being integrated into like the school system, is that it's really difficult for working parents, because the school hours, I mean, are like 9 to 3:30 at their school this year. Last year at the other school that she went to, it was 8:10 to 2 or 3:10 or something. And so it's just really challenging when you have two parents in a household who work full time and kind of work traditional jobs, like an office job. I think most people probably in the workforce, I'm making an assumption here, I feel like most people in the workforce are working a traditional Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. Like, there's obviously, you know, doctors and nurses and firefighters, police officers, like other people who work odd hours. But I would say probably most people work that standard hours. And it's just been like, how are the school's not set up to kind of support working parents by having before and after school programs or having busing to and from school. Our school doesn't have a before and after school program. The school we went to last year did. So it's just like, what are working parents supposed to do when the drop off and pickup times are not in line with traditional office job hours?
I don't know, because I remember being very young, in elementary school, and I would walk to school, and it was pretty far. It was over a mile away, which feels sketchy. And we didn't live in a nice area in Colorado Springs, and then there was stuff to do before school started, and then there was also an after school program. Although I would walk home.
You would just walk home?
Yeah.
When you were older, though, not when you were 6.
I mean, I think I was in like 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Maybe
a little older, yeah.
But there was an after school program where I would be at the school. Sometimes my parents would pick me up, but I was at school for like an hour, after school got out.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like a lot of schools do have before and after school programs, but I posted a video on Instagram a couple weeks ago about how you're just as working parents are trying to figure out like how are you going to drop off your kids, how are you going to pick them up when you work these regular hours. And thankfully, I mean, I have a flexible job now. Last year I didn't. When I worked for corporate, when I worked at eBay, did not have flexibility. One of the positions I had, but then I moved into a new role and I didn't have that flexibility where it was like, even though it is remote, you have to be here during these core hours. And if I still worked at a company like that, I mean, I would have to rely very heavily on my mom. A lot of people don't have parents that they can rely on. And I'd have to rely very heavily every single day on one of my neighbors. And not that I don't want to ask my neighbors for help, but like, I don't want to have to ask, and I think most people are like this, they don't want to have to ask their neighbors to help them literally every morning and every single day after school.
No, and it's funny because we have a neighbor who has 6 kids.
Yeah.
That offered to help us.
I know. And our neighbors are great. And it's more of just like, and by the way, we actually don't need help because I have the flexibility now. What I'm like, where I was coming from is like, there's a lot of people who do not have the privilege that our family has now. We didn't have that privilege last year. And people don't have privilege of having family to help, or maybe they don't, I don't know, maybe they don't know their neighbors or trust their neighbors. Like, I'm not saying that's our situation because I love our neighbors, but I would, even if I was in that position, I would feel really guilty to be like, okay, I have to drop off my kids at your house at 6:30 in the morning so I can commute into work. And then I won't be able to pick them up until 6 or 6:30 because I have to commute back. So my kids are basically with them every morning and every evening after school, Monday through Friday. Like, and then, that doesn't even count for early days on Fridays. So my point is like every single school needs to have a before and after school program.
Yeah. And, my best friend, I've known him for 20 years and he lives in our neighborhood, and he's offered to help. And I even feel guilty about that. But
like, we don't need help. I'm not talking about our personal, this isn't like an individual issue that I'm talking about, like our personal situation. Like whenever I bring up these topics on social media, I'm usually not talking about my like, oh, this is my problem. It's actually a societal problem. And that's why, because it doesn't affect me. I can do whatever I want. Sure. I work for myself. I can go and pick up, drop off, kids are sick, whatever. I can do that, this year. Last year, it was a lot more challenging. And there's millions of families that are affected by this. So this is really a societal issue. I'm not posting these videos or talking about these issues because it's a cry for help for me. I can just see that there's a larger societal issue that needs to be addressed. And there really does need to be a before and after school program that parents can pay for at every single school, full stop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if there was something, it would be very expensive for one.
Yeah. And there'd likely be wait lists. I've had people reach out and be like, my school does, but there's a wait list. And I think that there's, it's a multi-layered issue. I also do think employers need to be more flexible with parents, where they offer remote work or they offer shortened hours or some type of flexibility. Like it is like a multi issue that needs to be addressed that way.
Yeah. Because I mean, if I'm in court and, it's almost pickup time, what am I going to say? Like, can we wrap up this hearing so that I can leave and pick up my child?
Yeah. You just have to arrange like before and after, but it's just stressful. Yeah. And it was stressful when we weren't together. And on your parenting days, I tried to be flexible, but I was like, I also have a job. Just because I'm the remote worker doesn't mean that like I'm always on call. because
Sure.
it does affect, especially like as a woman. This is like not the topic we're getting into, but like a woman in the workforce, it's like you're constantly the default parent to take time off work to be home
Here's the
with
gotcha moment. The gotcha moment. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Anyway, so sorry. I know that was a rant, but I feel bad when people, our friends or people will come to me and be like, "Hey, do you need help with the kids?" Or like, "We're happy to do it." And I'm like, I know it's what they saw what I posted on social media, and that's fine. And I'll gladly like accept help when I need it or ask for help. I love having like that type of relationship with people and like having a great village. But I'm like, just because I'm putting something on social media doesn't mean that like it's like a cry for help. I feel like that's like the best way to put it. Daphne starts preschool on Monday, and we were talking about this too, that I was like kind of ranting about, but her preschool doesn't start. Cody's looking at me like, don't. Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm not looking at you like anything.
I told you this was going to be a rant. We're
No,
just
get
ranting.
it. Get it, girl.
Rant. You rant. Why am I? You rant too?
I'm not a ranty person.
Yeah, I know you're not actually. Very rarely are you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
But you can rant. Just let it out.
If I think of something I want to rant about, we'll do a podcast and then I'll just rant.
Okay. The other frustrating thing about the ages that our kids are is that our oldest daughter Harper, she's in all day school now, and my our younger daughter Daphne is starting pre-K, and pre-K, at least here in Utah, I don't know what it's like the rest of the country, but it's half day, and it's only, you can either do 2 or I think some schools have 3 days, but it's just a half day. Her preschool is at the same school that Harper goes to, but it doesn't start at the same time. It starts 30 minutes after Harper's does. So like I'm going to have to go and drop Harper off and then just chill in my car, I guess, for 30 minutes till I drop off the younger one. It's just like a whole ordeal. And this is something that's just like not, I think it's normal across all schools. It's not just our school. I think this is just like how the school system is in general. But it's extremely inconvenient.
I mean, it's fine in the summer when you can go play at the park, but
Yeah.
during the winter, it's.
Yeah, when it's a blizzard outside, I'm just gonna have to sit in the car and just give her tablet, or I don't know. Like, well, we'll just have to figure it out. But it's like this is like a really strange year. And then I've talked about this before. I mean, we're not really facing it this year, but in Utah, and I think a couple other states, there's not a requirement to have all day kindergarten. So most schools only offer half day kindergarten Monday through Friday. So it's like 3 hours. And that was an issue that we had last year. And why Harper went to a different school is because we did a lottery system. Like we applied, I think, to like 5 or 6 lotteries in the Salt Lake Valley, and Harper got into one. And so that's the school that she went to because we wanted the all day option. And so I think we're going to have to broach that again next year with Daphne.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get her into the all day next year so that we can just be done. The kids will be on a consistent schedule, same time, same drop off, same pickup. That will be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for you, you're going to have to do it, which is terrible. I mean, I want to be able to do it because I want to be able to help. Like it frustrates me that like I have to be to work at that time and I can't leave, and be here. So it's frustrating. It would be nice to drop off and pick up, but I think it's just the guilt that it's put on your plate that you have to do it.
Well, and this isn't we're not having a conversation today about like default parenting or anything like that. But sometimes it just like is what it is. Like often mothers are the ones who have the more flexible schedule or they're working remote or whatever. And so there's certain things that are just going to fall on you, and there's just nothing, it's no one's fault. It's just the way it is. With your job, you have to commute downtown. You work very strict hours. You did say that when you work from home, there might be times where you can help out and like go pick them up or whatever. And so, but it's just the way it is, it's no one's fault, and you just have to accept it and figure it out. Yeah.
And create podcasts about it.
Yeah.
Maybe change the system.
Yeah. I just think that I think that there's certain things that could be done in the school system just by offering before and after care. All they need is before and after care at every single school. That's all we're asking. And it doesn't have to be done by teachers. I was like another bit of like, not backlash, but like some comments that I got was from teachers saying like teachers shouldn't be asked to do more. And I agree with that. Teachers should not be asked to do more because they get paid horribly. They are teaching our children. Like, I'm not saying that they should be in charge of the before and after school program. That should be someone else. And then you pay for it, like that's just what you have to do.
Yeah, I would be fine, paying for it.
Yeah.
They can be there for an hour, hour and a half until you can get there. But yeah, as it's currently set up, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it is very difficult. Yeah. And so that kind of like goes into like the other thing that I wanted to talk about also. Where are you? What?
Just segueing.
Huh?
Nothing.
Oh, are you making fun of my segue?
I'm just drawing the audience's attention to it.
Okay. I think that they could probably pick up that it was a segue.
I know I'm selling them short.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is like a third child. It's never, I'm not saying, you know that. We've talked about this a million times, but I'm not saying that I want a third child, but it's no secret that I've wanted 3. I've always said that, and I've talked about it very openly on social media, even before like we got divorced and all that stuff. And people have asked about it because they know that it's something that I did always want. And it's funny because obviously we're like so new in the relationship that it's not something that like that's not happening. But I feel like biology and my body and some of like the body changes I've been going through with my hormones, like I can feel biology trying to do its job, if that makes sense.
Tick, tick, tick.
Well, I think it's just like when certain times of my cycle, like my body is just wanting to create a baby.
Reset to alt settings.
Yeah, and it's always like that, but like I just feel like lately I've been feeling it more, And I also feel like because our kids have gotten older, Daphne just turned 4. They're getting older, they're bigger. It makes me think about when they were babies and how I miss that time and how it really does just go so fast. And I know that's annoying to say, but it does go fast. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God, like, how is that part of my life over?
Yeah, I have all these flashbacks on my phone. Your phone will give you flashbacks 5 years ago. And, it's from when Harper was just tiny. And there were so many moments that I just miss, when she was little. And the 18-month is like my favorite time.
Yeah, I know. I love that.
Where they're just like growing and developing and just like more interactive. And, it's just, I miss that so much. And, not trying to get like too deep on this, but, when I was like drinking and stuff, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that like I kind of took for granted and that I missed and that I wasn't fully present for. And, not saying let's have a kid so that I can have those moments, but, there is stuff that I really miss.
Yeah.
Even though they're very challenging now.
Yeah. Well, and they're both so different. I feel like now that I'm an experienced mother where I've had 2, feel like my experience as a mom with Daphne was much different than my experience with Harper, where with your first, it's kind of just a shock to the system. Mm-hmm. Your whole world is turned upside down in a second. And with your second child, at least in my experience, you know what to expect. And so my experience was much better with the second. And I wonder if it would be even better with the third, because you do know what to expect. I don't know. I've heard kind of mixed reviews on going to a third, but yeah, it's really emotional to think about like that part of our life just being over. And I often feel like and think about, when we're older and our kids are moved out, they're in college and they're getting on with their life and we only have 2 children. I grew up with a big family. I grew up with 5 siblings and we're all very close in age and we're all really pretty close even now as adults. It's really hard for me to imagine our 2 kids only having each other and not having another sibling, because I don't know, it's like you can't play these like what if games, but like what if there's a falling out between them? Like I've had my things with some of my family members where we go periods of time where we don't talk or we got in an argument or like things have happened and and we always end up coming back and figuring it out, which is good. But it's like, what if that happens with our kids? They like fall away from each other or whatever happens. And there's just like not a third there when we have Thanksgiving dinner. Like I just imagine there being more like a bigger family.
Yeah, I was one of 2. So, my brother and I are very close. I think our situation's a little different. And it kind of drove us to be closer. But I mean, we've lived in different states at periods of time, but we've always remained close. And but it's very difficult, like you want them to have somebody besides you, or if they feel
because
like
one day we're not going to be here and it's like they're only going to have one sibling.
Yeah.
And if something happens to that sibling or they live across the country, like have you ever felt like alone because you only have one brother and he has lived across the country, a couple different times.
No, but I can see how someone would.
You've never
Yeah.
felt that way?
I mean, yeah, we've always stayed close. We always talk on the phone when,
I know, yeah.
he's out. And I think my situation, like I said, is unique. It's
Yeah.
a little different. So, but I can see how it would be that way for people,
Yeah.
how you would feel alone or feel isolated or.
Well, I also feel like even though I imagine our family just being bigger, it's just a really hard choice to make because I feel like now that the kids are older, I feel like they're at that age where they're easier. They don't need that constant attention, especially lately. Like they've been getting along pretty well. Like I've really
Don't
been
jinx it.
I know. I've really been working with Daphne on independent play. And so I feel like I'm getting some of my freedom back where I'm able to actually do things when they're home
Breathe. Go
and
to the bathroom
yeah, and
without
it's
interruptions.
right. Well, it still happens and like they always want to come in the shower with me and I'm just like I just want to take a shower alone.
Mostly without interruptions.
Right. But we're like right there. We're right there on the cusp of like it getting easier in that way. And the thought of going back to being needed 24/7, having a child always on you, diapers, all of that, it's hard to imagine when it's like you're at the light, you're there, and then you just get sucked back in. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but when you start to get some of your independence and your freedom back after being a parent, it's hard to imagine like having it taken away again.
Yeah, especially when you have hobbies and things like that you're not going to be able to do
Yeah.
with another young child. Not to mention the financial aspect of it, which I
Yeah.
think is the most daunting for me.
Yeah. The financial aspect, I've been working with a financial advisor. And then I did actually a partnership with a life insurance company. And there was a study that was done, and it estimated that raising a child in the United States costs on average $311,000. And that doesn't even include college. That number is very overwhelming. And then when I sat down with my financial advisor, she was asking, okay, let's talk about the girls' college. Like, do you want to contribute to a 529? That's like the account that you can open for college savings. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And she's like, okay, well, what type of school do you want to pay for? Do you want to do community college, in-state college? Do you want to do 2 years, 4 years? Do you want to do Ivy League? Like there's all these different options. And, even just an in-state tuition for 4 years, every year. I mean, it's estimated, it was like $28,000 a year for 4 years times 2 children. And that's not if they go to graduate school. That's not if, and I want to be able to help our kids financially to go to school in some capacity, but it's very overwhelming as a parent to be like, okay, we could have another child, but that's going to take away from these other two that we already have financially. Like maybe we won't be able to pay for a 4-year college. Maybe we'll only be able to do 2. And so those are really tough realities to face when making those types of choices.
Yeah, I mean, for my associates, I went to a community college. It's cheaper.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. So, I wasn't getting a bunch of scholarships. I mean, that would help, but I mean, college is just so expensive,
It's
now.
outrageous.
And, going forward, I mean, I can't imagine how much it's going to be in 15 years.
Well, so she estimated based on inflation, I guess the inflation rate for college each year is about 7%. So that was calculated in like the cost of inflation for like, so when they go to college, like what will it be based on that inflation rate? So I don't think it's 28,000 now a year for in-state, but based on what it will be calculated to. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say.
I know what you mean. Because I went to college. So
I'm talking in circles. I always think of that clip from The Office, random thought, but the one with Michael where he's like, sometimes I just start a sentence and I hope it goes like where it's supposed to go or whatever.
Improvisation. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just like very much my personality.
Just find your way.
I just find my way. I just go. It's the ADHD. It's the unmedicated ADHD.
Which is a very beautiful thing,
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just hard. It's hard to make that choice when you think about it. Now that I'm like saying it right now in that way. I mean, if like having a third child is going to take away from our older two, like I would say no.
Yeah.
Like if it was like, oh, we can't put you in a 4-year college because we had a third child, like I would decide not to have a third child to put our kids in a 4-year.
Well, and there's also like a selfish aspect of it that I consider as well. I mentioned the hobbies that, you won't be able to do, but also you want to give your kids the best possible life, right? So if you can give two, a much better life than you could, realistically give three, I think you would do it for two.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because I love our kids so much and, I don't want to take away from my time and money that I have to offer them,
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, that's the hardest part for me is the financial aspect. The time aspect is a big thing. And also, I just like sleeping through the night. It's just so great.
One thing I want to say about the time aspect, I mean, obviously my parents, they had 6 kids. All of us were on average 18 months apart. Some were bigger gaps, some were shorter. But my mom and dad had 6 kids in 12 years. You would think that I would have felt that like negligence from my parents, like just because they had so many freaking kids. I never once growing up ever thought to myself, I'm not getting enough attention from my parents. Like that was never a thought that I ever had. And people have asked me, like, did you feel this way because your parents had so many children? I literally never felt that way. And I know that's not going to be everyone's experience growing up. There might be some people out there who really did feel like, oh, my parents had too many kids. Like I don't feel like I got the time and attention that like I needed, or I felt envious of my siblings who had that. I never felt that way. And I still don't feel that way. Like I feel like my parents, I don't know, maybe they just did a really great job. But I never felt that from either of them.
No, I think your parents are kind of freaks of nature too. The fact that
They're
your
great.
mom, your mom and dad were able to do what they did with you guys is amazing. I think parents, they just do the best they can,
Yeah.
and they make it work.
Well, and the other thing that, speaking of like my parents, is that the cost of living now is higher than it was 30 years ago when my parents were raising kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad had a good job. I don't know what his income was at that time, but it was probably like mid to high. It wasn't a crazy amount of money that he was making, but it was a comfortable living. But just the thought of how much money like you would have to make today in order to support 6 children and give them like a good life. Like I had a very privileged life. I worked and those types of things, but I was given a lot of things. I grew up in a nice neighborhood. I went to a nice school. Like we had the things that we needed. We never went without food. I did ballet for years. That's a very expensive activity to participate in. So I grew up very privileged. And so just thinking about that, it's like, how could you support 6 children on a single income and give them a privileged, blessed life? Like, I don't even know what that number today would be, but I mean, it would be a lot.
Yeah, like I grew up in poverty, there were periods of like unemployment from my parents, I'll spare you the details, but it was a difficult upbringing, but I never felt like my parents didn't love me.
Yeah.
So I think just parents, from all backgrounds, just do the best they can. They somehow make it work for their family. But I mean, they couldn't have paid for my college. They couldn't have got me a car. I think my first car was like $1,000. It was just like a little piece of shit. But, I was excited about it. So I think it's just also mentality and just upbringing and just how your parents raise you. Like I'm not an entitled person. And I think that's one good thing about my upbringing is I didn't expect this stuff. I knew I had to work to go to college and do all of these things.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up that, even though I grew up like this is like not this, we're deviating a little bit, but that's okay. I'll say it. But even though like I grew up very privileged, like my parents did a really great job at teaching us kids, like all of like me and my siblings, we all have really good work ethic. Like, even though we did have a lot of, I don't want to keep saying privilege, but like we had a lot. My parents made us work. Like we always had chores. I got a job when I was, I think 15 and a half, doing work release in high school. I did get the hand-me-down car that my parents had bought for my one of my older brothers, and then I got it eventually when I was at driving age. But I had to pay my gas. I paid my insurance. So, I got a little bit, but my parents did teach me like that really good work ethic. And yeah, honey, it's okay. Huh? Yeah, we're all done with the iPads though right now. Okay, I already overrode it. Can you go and play for a little bit? We're almost done. Okay, we're
Just watch
almost.
hers with her.
I
I'll be
know.
right down.
We're almost done. We just have like 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Yes. You got your iPad before Daphne, honey. Yes, you did. No.
And that is why we're only having 2.
Should I leave it in there?
Cut.
Yeah, I forgot what I was saying after that. Like, where was I?
The decision has just been made.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. The other thing that I want, the other like thought I've had too, which has been really hard, like, because I really do want another baby. Like, I really do. And I know we're too early in the relationship, like retrying in the relationship to do that. So, like, we're not right now, but I've been thinking about it a lot. And I'm like, even if we were in a place where, we had been like, maybe we never got divorced or we had been together longer at this point in time, I still would have a lot of hesitations because of my career and, what I'm choosing to do with my business, what I'm choosing to do online. Obviously, if you have a baby, you're going to take time off work. I don't have a paid maternity leave working for myself and being self employed. And so there would be this pressure to continue to, create content. And, what would that look like for my business? I would have to outsource and hire people to kind of pick up the slack for me, which as a small business, when you're really not, you're not making, I'm not making money right now in my small business. Everything is just going back to pay back loans and to fund the business. So I'm trying to be really mindful of spending, but I would obviously have to pay for more things. Like I would have to pay for help in order for those to keep going. And so I would feel a pressure of like, I can't take a maternity leave. I have to continue working, even though I'm physically recovering. I also want to keep progressing my career and seeing where things take me. Like I have some trips planned for next year that I'm really excited about. And, who knows what is going to happen in the future. And I hate to say that. And it sounds very selfish as I'm saying it out loud, but it's something that I think about because having a baby, it's going to affect me and it's going to affect my career.
I don't think it's selfish at all. When we split up, I think we both grew in a huge way, personally and professionally, and to your credit. And, like I always say this, like you put your life on pause for me to go to school, for me to pursue, my dream career, for me and my hobbies. Like you did everything to support me in my stuff, and I want to support you in that way now.
So you'll carry the baby, birth the baby, breastfeed the baby so I can just keep on going.
Cut.
I'm just teasing.
No, I mean, you're doing a lot of things that like you wanted to do for a long time, and having a child would make that difficult. I mean, no matter how much I helped, it would still make it difficult for you.
Yeah. And by the way, you don't even do you get parental leave where you work?
Yeah, I don't know how much time it is. I think it's like...
You should look into that. Not that you look scared.
I thought this was a hypothetical situation.
We got to just make, we got to make good choices.
An informed decision.
Well, because that would make a difference. Because I'm not going to get a maternity leave as self-employed. Even if I was employed, well, I would at eBay. eBay has a really generous maternity, but like a lot of companies don't, and that's just like an unfortunate reality that a lot of women are faced with. If I have a baby, what is this going to do for me career-wise? What's this going to do to my mental health? Having to go back to work and pump and be, physically recovering while I'm back at work, the financial stress of not getting paid if you do choose to take the 3-month unpaid leave. It's an unfortunate reality that it just affects women more than men. Sure. And then on top of that, like if companies don't offer a parental leave for fathers, I mean, if they do offer that, like that would be a huge help, to the mother where they can kind of slow down and not have to do as much because the dad would be home helping.
Yeah, I know that my firm, they offer, I think 12 weeks paid for maternity.
Oh,
paternity, I don't know. I'd imagine maybe 4 weeks, something probably, like that.
Yeah.
But I think this is even more reason for us to move to Norway.
We don't know Norwegian.
They speak a lot of English.
And Harper's in Spanish immersion, so we're not even close.
Let's put her in Norwegian immersion.
There's another school close. They do German, but it's not the same.
Germany would be cool.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've heard really good things actually, but I don't know.
Anywhere.
I don't think it's going to happen. Then we'll have no village. My family, no, that's just... I know you want to move there. We're not moving there.
Just like that, my dreams are shattered.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens in the next year or so. But then that's just like, we're going to have a huge gap. And it's like, am I really going to want to go back to that? And then if I don't, then when am I going to have regrets later? I just hate it. I feel like I'm just like,
you are a textbook overthinker. You can talk yourself into and out of anything.
I know, I do. And then I end up not making any choices. This is why I'm really bad at decision making. I know, even deciding where to eat for dinner is like, I can't decide.
You were very confident in what you wanted for lunch after we left the gym today, though.
Well, that's like my jam. And it's healthy. And I like their rolls. It's like a dessert, the rolls. I hope the kids haven't eaten it. I was saving it for later.
They probably did.
Yeah, I hope not.
Just another reason to only have 2.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? That's all I have on my notes.
No, I think life just feels good. I'm really happy. Things are going good. We're finding a groove.
I think we are too. I think we're finding a groove. It took, there was a little bit of a hump we had to get over. The shock to the system, being with the kids 24/7 again, when you're used to having days of breaks,
a week off.
Yeah, it's sad, but also it's nice. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean.
And then you come back to it and you're like, oh my God, so anyway, it was like 2-week period. I feel like for me, it was like a shock to the system where I'm like, holy shit, this is like a lot.
Did we make a mistake?
We're over that now.
Should we be together, but just like live in separate places?
I know.
Split it up.
My dad actually said, he's like, there's people who are in relationships who, they have their separate homes. And I'm like, who are you talking about? Literally, I don't know one person that has ever done that.
I have an idea.
No, I don't think that.
Mike, if you're listening, we love you very much.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps it up. So we'll talk next week, guys. Thanks for joining, and we'll see what happens years to come.
So awkward. Thanks for letting me be here.